copper wire antennas sticking out of garden soil, Epsom salt sprinkled around tomato plants, gardeners planting seeds by the light of a full moon. Your social media feed right now is absolutely packed with hacks that promise to double, triple, even quadruple your harvest. And honestly, some of them look pretty convincing. But here's what got me curious. When I actually went looking for the research behind these claims, I found something wild. A few of these hacks are backed by science, a couple are completely useless, and one of the most popular ones on the internet is actually making your plants worse. Oh, and the techniques with the biggest proven yield increases? They're not from TikTok, they're from civilizations that figured this out thousands of years ago. So let's go through 12 of the most popular harvest-boosting techniques and find out which ones actually work, which ones are garbage, and which ones might just change how you garden forever. Let's start with the biggest one, electroculture. If you've been anywhere near gardening social media lately, you've probably seen someone wrapping copper wire into a spiral, sticking it into their garden bed like a little antenna, and claiming it tripled your tomato harvest. The idea goes back to a French engineer named Justin Christoflo, who in the 1920s sold over 150,000 of these devices and reported doubled harvests across French wine regions. Supporters claim the copper captures atmospheric energy and channels it into plant roots, supercharging growth without fertilizer or pesticides. The hashtag electroculture has racked up over 6.6 million views on TikTok alone, and entire companies now sell copper coil kits for $20 to $30 each. So does it work? In 2025, researchers at Marquette University decided to actually test it. They set up a proper controlled experiment published in the journal PLOS One, testing copper-wrapped dowels on mustard greens, kale, beets, and turnips with proper controls. The result was clear. No consistent evidence that passive electroculture improves crop growth or yield, not even a little bit. They also measured photosynthesis rates across all the test plants. No improvement there either. Now, here's the important nuance that most debunking videos miss. Legitimate electrostimulation research does exist. A 2022 study published in Nature Food used a triboelectric nanogenerator and achieved 26% faster germination and 18% higher pea yields. Russian researchers working with electric fields at 30 kilovolts per meter increased plant height by 32%. But these are active high-voltage systems running in controlled laboratory conditions. A passive copper wire sitting in garden soil generates so little voltage it can't affect plant biology through any known mechanism. Washington State University Extension specialist Dr. Linda Chalker-Scott put it bluntly in her assessment. None of these promises are backed with any reliable scientific evidence. The most likely explanation for those glowing TikTok testimonials? Gardeners who try electroculture tend to water more carefully, weed more often, and pay closer attention to their plants. Scientists call this the Hawthorne effect. When you're excited about a new technique, you tend your garden better. And that attention, not the copper wire, is the real fertilizer. Some electroculture sellers are now charging $20 to $40 for pre-wound copper coils that cost about $2 to make. So somebody's harvesting something here, just not vegetables. But the questionable claims don't stop at copper wire. Let's talk about garden bed geometry. You've probably seen the claim that planting in circles produces 400% more food than traditional beds. It sounds incredible, and it's completely made up. No published study has ever compared circular versus rectangular bed yields. The 400% number appears to conflate the general benefits of raised beds and intensive spacing with the circular shape itself. In fact, when permaculture designer Ben Stallings actually did the math on circular keyhole beds, analyzing the famous diagrams from Toby Hemingway's book Gaia's Garden, he found that 36% of the planted area in a circular bed is unreachable from the keyhole access path. You literally cannot tend to more than a third of your growing space without stepping on the bed and compacting the soil. Rectangular keyhole designs actually give you more usable planting space per square meter. The real value of keyhole gardens, which were originally developed in the 1990s in Lesotho for communities dealing with limited resources, comes from the built-in composting basket at the center that continuously feeds the surrounding soil, not the shape. But there is a geometry-based growing method that actually delivers on its promises. Square-foot gardening, developed by Mel Bartholomew in books that have sold over 2.5 million copies, makes a simple but measurable claim. You can get 100% of the harvest in 20% of the space, and the data backs it up. Traditional row gardens waste 50 to 60% of their total area on walking paths between rows. Square-foot gardens push path waste down to about 20%. Packing plants into intensive grids where every square foot is productive. University extension data confirms intensive spacing can increase yields 2 to 4 times per unit of area. A Minnesota master gardener study tracked 89 gardeners over multiple growing seasons, from 2018 to 2022, and found average yields of 1.5 pounds per square foot, with the highest performing gardeners reaching well above that through dense planting and relay planting techniques. The method genuinely works. It just has nothing to do with circles. Now, those are the viral geometry hacks. But some of the oldest planting strategies on Earth involve something much more interesting than bed shape. They involve putting the right plants next to each other. Indigenous peoples across the Americas figured out something over 500 years ago that modern agricultural science is only now confirming with large-scale data. The Haudenosaunee and other native nations developed a system called the Three Sisters, planting corn, beans, and squash together in the same mound. The corn stalks shoot up first, providing a natural trellis for the bean vines to climb, which means you do not need to build a single support structure. The beans grab nitrogen right out of the atmosphere through bacteria in their root nodules and pump it into the soil, feeding the nitrogen-hungry corn beside them. And the squash spreads its huge, prickly leaves across the ground, creating a living mulch that suppresses weeds, locks in soil moisture, and even discourages raccoons and other animals from walking through the patch. 3 plants, each solving a problem for the other 2. You do not need fertilizer, you do not need a trellis, and you barely need to weed. It is no wonder this system fed entire civilizations. A 2025 collaborative study with the Catawba Indian Nation confirmed the system's efficiency on a land-equivalent basis. You get more total food from the same plot of ground than you would growing each crop in separate rows. And a massive PNAS meta-analysis of 226 field experiments found that intercropping in general saves 18 to 23% of farmland compared to monocultures. When researchers tested maize and pea combinations specifically, they found you would need roughly 47% more land to produce the same combined yield using separate plantings. Maize and soybean systems showed similar gains across 90 different studies. In semi-arid African environments, corn and bean intercropping produces 13% more grain and 42% higher economic returns than growing them apart. However, not all companion planting claims survive scrutiny. A West Virginia University dissertation found tomato and basil combinations produced 20% yield advantage, but only at specifically optimized densities and ratios. Simply planting basil next to your tomatoes does not guarantee anything, and double-blind taste tests showed no consistent flavor improvement from the pairing, despite what every gardening blog on the internet claims. The widely shared companion planting charts online mostly lack research citations, and many bad companion claims have little to no field evidence behind them. The takeaway? Intercropping works. The Three Sisters work. But specific companion planting claims need to be evaluated individually, not accepted from an infographic. Now let's go underground. Because the most impactful thing you can do for your harvest doesn't involve what you plant at all. It involves what's living in your soil. Underneath almost every healthy plant in your garden, there's an invisible network connecting roots to a massive web of fungal threads called mycorrhizae. Think of it like an underground internet for plants. These fungi extend the effective reach of plant roots by extraordinary distances, pulling in water and nutrients the roots could never access on their own. This isn't fringe science. This is A meta-analysis of 546 field observations found that mycorrhizal fungi increased crop yields by 23% under rain-fed conditions. Phosphorus uptake improved by up to 105%. And plants colonized by these fungi showed dramatically better drought tolerance, which matters more every year as weather patterns get more extreme. But here's the catch that could save you a lot of money. A 2025 meta-analysis published in the journal New Phytologist tested commercial mycorrhizal products from around the world. 84% of them lacked viable fungi entirely. Only 12% both contained living mycorrhizae and actually benefited crops. That represents an estimated $876 million in wasted global spending every year. So if you're going to invest in mycorrhizal inoculants, look for products from university-tested sources and check for verified spore counts. Also know that brassicas like cabbage, broccoli, and kale don't form mycorrhizal relationships at all. About 29% of all plant species skip this partnership entirely. The real way to build mycorrhizal networks in your garden? Stop tilling, minimize fungicide use, and add organic matter consistently. The fungi will come. Speaking of organic matter, let's talk about the most underappreciated amendment in gardening. Worm castings, vermicompost, whatever you want to call it, this humble material outperforms almost everything else you can add to your soil. A meta-analysis published in Agronomy for Sustainable Development found an average 26% increase in commercial yield and a 78% increase in shoot biomass when vermicompost was applied at 30 to 50% of soil volume. For legumes specifically, the yield increase hit 57%. What makes worm castings fundamentally different from regular compost? Researchers have measured quantifiable concentrations of auxins, cytokinins, gibberellins, and other plant growth hormones in vermicompost. These hormones simply aren't present in standard compost. The humic acids in worm castings literally activate pumps in root cell membranes, forcing them to absorb more nutrients. This isn't just plant food, it's a biological growth stimulant produced by worm digestion. The limitation is scale. Vermicomposting requires temperature management and is more labor-intensive than tossing scraps in a heap. Red wigglers, the most common composting worm species, need bedding, consistent moisture, and temperatures between 55 and 77 degrees Fahrenheit to work efficiently. But you can maintain a productive worm bin in a garage, basement, or even under a kitchen sink. For raised beds, containers, and targeted applications on high-value crops like tomatoes, peppers, and strawberries, the return on investment is hard to beat. A single worm bin can produce enough castings for several raised beds over the course of a growing season. Now, speaking of soil amendments with ancient roots, there's one inspired by a civilization that built something so remarkable it's still fertile after 2,000 years. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, scattered across an estimated 150,000 square kilometers, there are patches of soil so dark and rich they stand out like islands in a sea of nutrient-poor jungle floor. They're called terra preta, Portuguese for dark earth, and they were created by pre-Columbian peoples between roughly 450 BCE and 950 CE. These ancient farmers mixed charcoal, bone, fish waste, and pottery shards into the soil, creating a substrate so productive it remains extraordinarily fertile thousands of years later. Cornell researcher Johannes Lehmann reports that terra preta soils can triple crop yields compared to surrounding depleted tropical soils. Papaya and mango trees grow 3 times faster on terra preta. A 2023 study published in Science Advances documented Quicuro villagers in the Amazon still actively creating terra preta today using fish and cassava waste. This isn't lost knowledge, it's a living practice. Modern biochar is essentially our attempt to recreate this ancient recipe, and the evidence base is enormous. A systematic review covering 26 separate meta-analyses found that biochar combined with fertilizer increases yields by about 15% at application rates below 10 tons per hectare. In acidic soils with a pH below 5, the increase jumps to around 40%. Tropical soils see about 25% improvement. But context matters enormously here. In temperate regions with neutral to alkaline soils, biochar often shows negligible benefit. It works as an amplifier of existing fertility, not a standalone solution. The mechanism involves raising soil pH through a limbing effect, increasing cation exchange capacity by 25 to 45%, and creating habitat for beneficial soil microorganisms. There's also Hugelkultur, the German technique of burying logs under raised mounds. A Western Kentucky University thesis found hugel mounds held almost twice as much water as flat comparison plots. But here's the honest truth. No controlled study has ever compared Hugelkultur yields against conventional raised beds. The technique has strong theoretical appeal, and the water retention data is real, but the first year of a hugel bed often sees reduced yields because decomposing wood temporarily locks up nitrogen. It can take 2 to 3 years before the bed hits its stride. Now, before we get to the ancient techniques that blow everything else away, let's quickly sort through the kitchen cabinet hacks you've probably seen on social media. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe. I dig into gardening science like this every week so you can spend less time guessing and more time growing. Milk spray on plants sounds ridiculous, but it's one of the best supported hacks out there. A landmark 1999 Brazilian study found that diluted milk at 1 part milk to 9 parts water controlled powdery mildew on zucchini more effectively than conventional fungicides. A University of Connecticut thesis and a separate 5-year study at Lockwood Farm both confirmed the results. The proteins in milk create a physical barrier on leaves and alter surface pH enough to inhibit fungal growth. For anyone growing squash, cucumbers, or melons, this is genuinely one of the cheapest and most effective tools available. Aspirin water has partial support. Salicylic acid is a real plant stress hormone, and USDA research showed roughly 50% reduction in bacterial spread in treated tomatoes. But dissolving a grocery store aspirin tablet is an imprecise way to deliver it. Cinnamon gets shared constantly as a natural fungicide, and cinnamon essential oil does have antifungal properties in laboratory settings. But the grocery store powder that gardeners actually sprinkle on their plants has never been tested in any peer-reviewed garden study. There's a big difference between concentrated essential oil and a dash of McCormick's. Burying fish heads under tomato plants is a time-honored tradition, and fish is genuinely nitrogen-rich fertilizer. But a controlled experiment by the gardening site GrowVeg found that fish-treated tomatoes actually yielded less than the untreated control group. The decomposing fish may have initially damaged young roots. Fish emulsion liquid products are a more practical way to get the same nutrients. And banana peel water? The potassium in banana peels doesn't simply leach into water from soaking, and the sugar content can promote mold growth and attract pests. You're better off composting the peels. But the hack that actively harms your garden more than any other is Epsom salt. It contains 0 nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. The extra magnesium competes with calcium at the root level, which actually worsens blossom and rot. North Dakota State University's Agriculture Extension has been trying to correct this myth for years. Unless a soil test specifically reveals magnesium deficiency, keep the Epsom salt in your bathtub. And while we're clearing up myths, planting by moon phases has been comprehensively evaluated and rejected. A 2020 review in the journal Agronomy examined over 120 references and found 0 reliable evidence for any relationship between lunar cycles and plant growth. The moon's gravitational pull on our planet is 300,000 times weaker than Earth's own gravity. Full moonlight is 128,000 times dimmer than sunlight, far below any useful threshold for photosynthesis. Different cultural traditions even prescribe contradictory lunar planting rules, which would be impossible if a real mechanism existed. Now, the 2 techniques I saved for last are the ones that genuinely floored me during this research, because they make everything else look modest by comparison. In the shallow lakes surrounding what is now Mexico City, the Aztec civilization built rectangular raised garden plots called chinampas, sometimes called floating gardens. These structures were built from alternating layers of mud, aquatic vegetation, and lake sediment, anchored by willow trees planted along the edges. The constant access to nutrient-rich lake water meant Chinampus could produce up to 7 harvests per year, yielding an estimated 13 times more food than conventional dry farming on the same amount of land. This system fed 200,000 to 400,000 people in the ancient capital of Tenochtitlan. Today, a modern farmer named Jose Pais still works traditional Chinampas near Mexico City and produces up to 100 kilograms of broccoli daily from just 7,000 square meters. Only about 125 acres of traditional Chinampas remain in active production, but revival efforts have surged since COVID-19 disrupted food supply chains. UNESCO has designated the Xochimilco Chinampas a globally important agricultural heritage system. And then there are the Waru of the Andes. These raised field systems were developed over 2,000 years ago near Lake Titicaca at nearly 4,000 meters elevation, one of the harshest farming environments on Earth. The design is elegant. Raised planting platforms sit between water-filled canals. During the day, the canal water absorbs solar heat. At night, it radiates that heat back toward the beds, keeping them about 1 degree Celsius warmer than surrounding fields. In an environment where a single overnight frost can destroy an entire potato crop, that single degree is the difference between a harvest and a disaster. Archaeologist Clark Erickson reconstructed Waru fields near Lake Titicaca and measured potato yields of over 8 tons per hectare, compared to a regional average of just 2 to 3 tons. That's 3 to 4 times more food using a technique that was abandoned centuries ago during Spanish colonization and then rebuilt from archaeological evidence. The knowledge was literally dug out of the ground during a devastating frost event in 2023 that dropped temperatures to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Waru fields in the Peruvian highlands produced food while conventional farmland around them was wiped out completely. Farmers who had laughed at the old-fashioned-looking raised beds were suddenly asking their neighbors how to build them. Today, Andean communities are reviving Waru at a growing pace, combining the ancient design with modern crop varieties. Researchers estimate that hundreds of thousands of hectares of abandoned raised field systems still exist across the Altiplano, waiting to be restored. In a world where climate change is making growing conditions more unpredictable every season, a 2,000-year-old technique designed specifically to handle frost, drought, and flooding feels less like history and more like the future. These ancient systems aren't curiosities, they're blueprints. So, let's put it all together. If we rank everything we've covered today by the strength of the evidence, the picture gets really clear really fast. At the top sit companion planting and intercropping, backed by 226 field experiments showing 18 to 23% land savings. Mycorrhizal fungi come next, with 16 to 23% yield gains, but only if you can find a product that actually contains living spores. And vermicompost, with its 26% yield increase and unique hormonal profile, rounds out the top tier. In the solid middle ground, you'll find biochar, which delivers real gains in the right soil conditions. Square-foot gardening, which genuinely multiplies your space efficiency. And milk spray, which costs almost nothing and outperforms commercial fungicides on powdery mildew. At the bottom, taking up space in gardens everywhere and doing absolutely nothing? Electroculture, a 2025 controlled study, showed zero benefit. Epsom salt, which university extensions confirm actually makes common problems worse. And moon planting, which has no physical mechanism and contradicts itself across cultures. And standing above everything else? Terra preta, Chinampas, and Waru. Ancient techniques that represent some of the largest documented yield improvements in the entire history of agriculture. Systems that modern science is only now beginning to understand and rebuild. The uncomfortable truth for your social media feed is that no single hack replaces good soil biology, adequate nutrition, and attentive management. The techniques with the strongest evidence all share a common thread. They feed the living ecosystem in your soil or optimize how resources move through your garden, rather than promising one weird trick that changes everything. A soil test and quality compost will outperform any viral hack, and unlike a copper wire antenna, they actually have the research to prove it. If you want to see how ancient farming techniques are being revived around the world right now, that video is on screen. Subscribe for more science-backed gardening every week.